he didn't care about my successes or my witness, my failures. He loved me just for being who I was and living, I guess you could say. And he does all of us, every one of us, he loves unconditionally. Then I noticed that there was another light, a second light coming through the darkness from the left, and it was coming forward. And as it approached, I could see, the bubbling clouds that were around the edges. And then it was finally up near Jesus, was on next to Jesus. And that's where the hair was blowing. The hair that was going across his face was going toward that light, and the light was alive. It had, even though it was white, I could feel the colors of heaven coming out of it. And that was, I believe, we were in the tunnel. I believe the black velvety darkness that we were in was the tunnel. And the light was us being sucked toward heaven. And that was the entrance to heaven. And that's why Jesus was glowing out of it, because we were at the entrance to heaven.
My guest today is Janet Tarantino. Janet, you've had a plethora of amazing spiritual experiences, including near-death experiences. But first, I want to thank you for joining me today, taking the time out of your life to spend sharing your story with me and my viewers.
It's my pleasure, my pleasure. And I didn't know a lot of these things were spiritual experiences until I had my major near-death experience.
That's something that I find is pretty common, that a lot of people don't know what their experiences were all about, if they were spiritual. They've never heard of near-death experiences or even spiritual experiences in general. So that's one of the reasons it's so amazing to me, and such a blessing to me that you share your story, because this helps all kinds of people. It's very impactful. But if you want to start with your near-death experience, I think it was your third near-death experience that really got you going.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That one was the most profound and changed me more than any of them. And that happened because of an allergy that I had never had before. And the studies that IANS has done and the other organizations show that the after effects of some of these near-death experiences are sensitivities that are created. And I got the sensitivity to chemicals and some medications. Well, actually, mostly chemicals, like man-made chemicals. So I became overly sensitive to some man-made chemicals that were in scented plug-ins, which I had all around the house. But I didn't know this, because all my life I've had scented plug-ins. So why would they be affecting me now? So at this time, my husband and I lived on a 75-acre ranch that we had purchased years prior to this. And we loved the location because it was out of the city, yet it was close enough to commute to work. And each morning and each night, after our ranch chores were done and the animals were safe in their safe spots, we'd head for work or we'd head to the house, depending on the time of day. This particular fall season, I developed a sensitivity that I mentioned, but I didn't realize it. And the congestion I thought was caused by the animals or the hay that I was working with, the grass, because those were the commonly known allergies in that time that people suffered from. But I had never shown symptoms before. So I thought it would go away, but it didn't. So confused by this and what was happening, my tradition to burn candles, scented candles and plug-ins continued, and my congestion got really bad. So one day, my allergies were worse than usual, and I took, as was my practice, over-the-counter medication, allergy pills to alleviate my sinus congestion to help me breathe. And that night I went to bed and propped myself up on 3 pillows so I'd be more at a 45-degree angle so I could breathe better, because I always slept on my back with my hands over my tummy. And during the night, my chest started to hurt and I couldn't sit up. So I reached for my husband, but I couldn't feel him. And I called for him and he didn't respond. So all of a sudden, I was in a snap, I was out of my body. And that discomfort that I felt didn't last long. It was hurting, and it didn't, maybe I would say 30 seconds, if that, in what I could imagine right now. And then I was out of my body. And then I was up at the ceiling looking down at my physical body and my husband laying in bed. But I felt free. I felt absolutely free. I felt like I had taken the biggest, freshest breath that I had ever taken. And I was floating in a velvety darkness of boundless love and tranquility that I'd never experienced. You can't experience that kind of stuff in this world. And it was just pure peace. And it was just, incomprehensible. And I also had the connection to the super consciousness at that time. And I knew that this is, normal. And I could feel my spirit arms drifting out to my sides, and they were elongated because they were no longer in the physical body. And because it was amazing. And then I saw, as I floated there, because I was felt like I was on my back, kind of floating face up, and I saw a silver cord float by very slow, from left to right in slow motion, in an atmosphere that appeared to be weightless or timeless, because it was just like in outer space, something floating in outer space. But I didn't know what that was. And that is, it's in Ecclesiastics in the Bible, which is the silver cord. When it snaps, then you'll come home to heaven. And it's also in the spirituality belief system as the tether that tethers us, our spirit to heaven. But I also saw a ball of light approaching off to my right, and in a slight S-shaped curve, and it was coming toward the bedroom, where actually I was above the bedroom at this point, but everything in the ceiling kind of had melted away. And was facing the bed like a doctor would be, viewing its patient, but the light was coming from behind me, even though I could see it no matter what direction I happened to be facing. I felt like I was facing. I don't know what I was. I was just pure energy at that time, but I wasn't concerned about that light because I wanted to see what was going on down at my physical body, because there was something happening. So I noticed that something blue, a shimmering blue essence, the color of the sky, was drifting up out of my physical legs. And just by merely wanting to look at it, I was down at my waistline, watching it lift out. It came out of my feet first, then my ankles, then my shins, and up to my thighs. And then the metamorphosis takes place, because when I could watch this, because I was my spirit body that already left the upper part of my body, and I was watching the remainder of my spirit body leave the physical body. And when it completely left the body, then it drifted up toward me, because I had stretched, obviously, to get out of that physical form. And then I started to morph into the shape, to a different shape. The shimmering blue energy then formed an orb shape, and I could feel my arms pull in, and then crossing and then my legs pulling up as I changed into this orb shape. And as the metamorphosis took place, I also had the fishbowl vision as it morphed, and then it became clear. Then all of a sudden, and I was resting in a wand of love. It felt like I describe it as a wand that children blow bubbles from. But this wand was more of a cushion, and I was resting in it. It was very cushy and comfortable, and everything was love. And this was God's way of letting me know that, he had created me, because I had sung songs previously. And while I was praying during those songs, I was praying, breathe upon this song, breathe upon me, breath of God. So I'm sure that was his method of tying that back to my prayer. Then all of a sudden, the light that was coming from the right zipped into my room and grew in front of me. And it grew into a beautiful, beautiful light being. And it was infused with light, and it had light rays coming out of its heart center. And I was glowing too, as it's this orb shape. I was glowing too, just like the light that had been coming toward my room, because it was like an orb shape came that was glowing, which was Jesus. So I didn't initially know who this figure was, because I couldn't see its face clearly, and I couldn't believe Jesus would come to me, come for me. I'm nobody, nobody important. So I thought, it was a female because it had hair down to its shoulders, and it was gently blowing in a breeze across his face. And because of the hair, I thought it was a woman with a man's body. I thought she was a stout individual, and angels have to be strong, so that's what I thought. And it was wearing a floor-length gown down to the floor, and it had sleeves that hung off its wrists, and it was tied at the waist with a rope. The typical Jesus style. But I still didn't think it was him. And his arms were open wide in a welcoming gesture. And he loved me, and I loved him. And he didn't care about my successes or my witness, my failures. He loved me just for being who I was, and living, I guess you could say. And he does all of us, every one of us, he loves unconditionally. Then I noticed that there was another light, a second light coming through the darkness from the left, and it was coming forward. And as it approached, I could see, the bubbling clouds that were around the edges. And then it was finally up near Jesus, was on next to Jesus. And that's where the hair was blowing. The hair that was going across his face was going toward that light, and the light was alive. It had, even though it was white, I could feel the colors of heaven coming out of it. And that was, I believe, we were in the tunnel. I believe the black velvety darkness that we were in was the tunnel. And the light was us being sucked toward heaven. And that was the entrance to heaven. And that's why Jesus was glowing out of it, because we were at the entrance to heaven. And then my attention went back to Jesus, because he held his hand out to me in a gesture of come take my hand. And before I could extend my hand, before I would extend my hand, I thought about my daughter, Gina, and I wondered how she'd take my death. Yeah, because we're close, we like to shop, together and have coffee, as women do. I've got two sons, but they're not into that kind of thing. We do other things, but I wondered how she would take my death. But without even asking, just the mere thought, he answered my question and he said she'd be okay. So I was okay with that and I was going to go to heaven. But the living light of God, the Almighty, reached his rainbow arms out of that entrance to heaven and he embraced me. When he held me, I felt as if I had huge protective arms that were hugging me and my back was against his chest. Even though he was energy, I felt like I was against his chest. And then holographic movies started to play and I heard him say, these moments matter, understand them. Some of the movies were of moments that had already happened, that I had already lived through, two of which I haven't shared yet. And well, I'm not sure that I'll share those I will share two more anyway, but some of them I won't get to. And some were of things in my life that hadn't happened. And those include that have now all happened. A council of spiritual beings, a white building with the word namaste over it, my brother, Doug, an oil rig, and a one world event that's not included in the book. These have all happened since then, and those are it will be in my book anyway. But I wanted to understand these films in heaven because who wants to go back to their body when they're in such love? You don't want to go back to your body. So that's when I morphed into another shape. So the spirit can, change forms as it desires or it wants to, because the angels came for me. And I changed into a white translucent figure of a person, and then the angels touched the top of my elbows and lifted me high in the sky. And it was as if they jumped us ahead in time, because what they showed me, and it's where I had a veridical experience, that I lived it too. Even though it was a vision or I jumped ahead in time, I lived through these things too. So I saw from all perspective, and it was showing me that I would die, because that's why I wanted to go, was I wanted to die and go to heaven. But they didn't change my mind. So I wanted to go to heaven, and then all of a sudden they jumped me back, and I was again in front of the light of God, and on the precipice of entering heaven. But I was shown one more image, and it was important to me because that image was of my middle child, Kurt. And instantly, upon seeing his face, I knew something was going to happen to him in the future. And if I was not there to support him, his life would likely go down a pathway that would not be so good for him. Well, we all love our children, we want the best for them, and I would die for them, but I would also live for them too. So I knew I had to stay, and that's when I told God I wasn't ready to go yet. And I changed back into the shimmering blue energy, which I know is my share of God's spirit, which is termed the Holy Spirit or simply Spirit, depending on, what your belief. And I sat my butt down in my physical butt, and I slipped a spiritual foot into each one of my physical legs, and not totally. I grabbed my spirit knees with my spirit hands, and I rocked back and forth in the body until it's consciousness, because while I was out of my body, I knew who I was. I knew my family. I had my memories, but I was not in that body. That body is our clothing. So our consciousness is our spirit. So as I was sitting down, all the while I was re-entering my body, I got an echoing message that kept coming from heaven. And this kept saying, love is the only thing that matters. Love is the only thing that matters. And how beautiful is that? So even though these were holographic films that offered a panoramic view of my life's profound moments, it wasn't a life review. It became evident that the creator was imparting these scenes to illuminate the intricate significance embedded within each instance. That's very revealing and about its divine orchestration in our lives. And he does the same kind of thing for all of us. For me, initially, the messages were unfathomable. I knew I had died, but I didn't know what the rest of it meant, to me. I knew that was my portion of God's spirit, but, this was before I had any knowledge of near-death experiences, and spirituality was not in my family sphere, you could say. So it took a lot to figure out what to do. So how did I accomplish this? Initially, my attempts to communicate these experiences fell short of my intentions, which led me to embrace the wisdom of silence is golden. So I started to keep quiet. But the intention of the divine became apparent that it was not aligned with my continued reluctance toward undertaking. It was only after witnessing the manifestation of several of the videos that the profound realization struck me that God was signaling again that the occurrences that impacted me were important, and that I was, because they inevitably all pointed back to my near-death experience, this third one. But I'm a shy girl, I was, I was a shy girl, and I was shaken and confused about what to do. So one day I went home, and while I was home, I was thinking about it. And I looked up to heaven and I said, I don't know what you want me to do, just tell me. And so I went to bed and said a prayer. I had been reflecting upon my personal capabilities as, we think about our skills. I initially considered my reserved nature and shyness, and I concluded that public speaking may not align with my strengths. Subsequently, upon assessing my ability for writing, I surmised that authoring a book presented a formidable challenge beyond my current skill set. So that night, I went to bed wondering, should I keep the experiences to myself or share them with others? So that's when I said a prayer, but I said the prayer in such a way that if I didn't get an answer, I could keep everything private, and so I could stay in my own comfort zone. So I fell asleep, not expecting nor even wanting an answer. But the next morning I woke up, and the environment around me transformed into a vision of me writing a book and me standing on a stage speaking about my experiences and what I learned. Upon introspection of these visions, I was led to the realization that the divine, unlike us, is not confined by our self-imposed boundaries or our abilities. It invites us to consider that perhaps our perceived limitations, because we set our own limitations, are not insurmountable, because they are surmountable. And as they, especially since Christ, his divine emissary, his Holy Spirit lives inside of us. Now, with that answer that I didn't want, I knew I had to find a way forward. After all, nobody would gets a directive from the Almighty, would you say no? So that's when I embarked on a journey to articulate the celestial phenomenon in layman's terms, which greatly expanded my knowledge. And additionally, navigating unfamiliar terrain of authoring and publishing a book, even though it was trying, it was enlightening. So I had to move forward with baby steps, which is the equivalent to, life's gradual advancements that eventually lead to achieving one's goals. And that's when, at the end of that process, that's when dying to see revelations about God, Jesus, our pathways, and the nature of the soul came to be. So I finally made it there and did get my book accomplished. And I've been talking and ever since and trying to hone my skills. Now, those movie moments go back, let's include a time when I was 4 years old. And when I was 4 or 5, it was pre-kindergarten age, because what I was waiting for the other children to get home from school. I didn't have anybody to play with. And I must have been on the verge of turning 5, because my next door neighbor was a year older, and I missed that cutoff by a day. So she was in school and I had to stay home. That's why I had nobody to play with. And my mom was on the phone talking about adoption. So when she got off, I told her, I said, well, am I adopted? And she said, no, silly, you're our little girl. So I took that as as the answer, but I remember what came out of my mouth next. What came out of my mouth next was, I'm okay, but I'm going to die young. Well, as at that young age, you don't know, what age is. So when I sat there or stood there, I thought about what's that mean? And everything in front of me transformed into 3 pictures kept flashing by. It was of a woman at different ages. And what I didn't know is that those visions were of me, that I was supposed to experience my 3 near-death experiences. So I was seeing pages of my own book of life, and these were preordained to happen, as certain events in our life are. Another video was when I had my first NDE at 15 due to an illness. This was another moment. And I was transitioning from middle school to high school and became very ill. My mom removed my sister from our shared bedroom so she could sleep in bed with me. And one night I felt as if that I had woke up, and I was looking up at the bedroom light. And then I felt I could smell the edges of death and sweat and sickness. And I heard a strange buzzing vibration. It was kind of low. And I felt like I fell. I felt like I fell backwards through the bed, but it wasn't my physical body that fell, because it was still lying in bed. It was my spirit that had fallen backwards through the mattress and had left my body. My mom wasn't aware of it, because these are silent, and then you don't know this. And so then in spirit, when I, gained my purchase, I looked up at the ceiling again, and now everything above me transformed into a sky of white clouds. And in the clouds, there was 2 spinning motions, one on each side of the room. And the first one started appearing on the left side of the room, and my attention first went there, and that opened to a different dimension. What I saw was a strange figure. It was a sumo wrestler. Now, who would think they would see a sumo wrestler? But I was just observing this, and it felt okay, natural. I wasn't fearful, because fear is a human, emotion, and I wasn't in my physical body. But that mighty figure was my spiritual guide, who is termed in the Bible as an angelic watcher. And with spiritualities, of course, the master guide, or by various other identifying names. And he didn't have wings. So, but I find it's, very, very interesting that he was in a white light and dressed in white, and he had a top knot in his hair. And recently I had listened to a online to a pastor at my church talking about a series about the invisible kingdom. And in his talk, he had talked about angels, and he said, it's that there's no mention in the Bible of angels having wings. So I believe our artists started creating the renditions of angels having wings based on their ability to fly, and that the light radiating around them can sometimes appear to be wings because it radiates so tremendously. Now, I probably was assigned this strong type of guide because of the number of near brushes with death that I had, and because this wasn't my first accident. They're not in the book. I kind of felt like I had a bullseye on the back of my, on my back because of all these accidents that were happening, but none of them were my fault. And I was being very safe at the time. So I just had to continue on with my life. But so anyway, this did seem perfectly natural. And then I started to see that he was moving on fast speed, forward and around a table. But every time he moved, his eyes were glued on me because he was watching. But I noticed when because initially I looked up at him in the ceiling through a hole in the ceiling. Then I was obviously raising up to his dimension, because when I was then looking forward at him, then his motions became normal again. So the fast movement was because heaven exists in a much higher and faster frequency of existence. And that's why there's a scripture that says 1,000,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000,000 years. So time does not exist in heaven like it does here. Heaven in comparison is amazing. So then I heard music coming from the other side of the room. So my attention went there. And in the tunnel that opened in the clouds on that side of the room, a beautiful music was coming out. And then a beautiful woman swished into view, and she had a white dress on with layers of lace, and she had dark hair down to her back, middle of her back. And she would seem to come riding in on divine heavenly music that to me sounded like angels singing. It's actually undescribable, and it's hard to to try to relate to people. But this, I termed her as the music box lady. And she turned and faced the sumo wrestler, and they started communicating from their separate tunnels. Their conversation was telepathic, and I wasn't allowed to listen. However, on some level, I must have known what they were discussing because of the terminology I used to describe the beautiful young woman. While they were having their conversation, and while the music box lady moved up and away for a while, I thought of her as Daddy's putting her up on a pedestal when she moved up and away. But I wanted to see her dress. So just by my mere desire to see her dress, because I was interested in fashion, I was going to go to high school, so I wanted to look really cool, And then I had an amazing experience with her dress up there. Then I returned back to above my body. When she returned, the music box lady, talked to the guide again. And then when that conversation ended, they morphed into orbs of light and flew out the wall behind me and then around the house. I could see through the wall like I had X-ray vision, just like the ceilings had melted too. You could see through walls. So they watched me for a moment in the side window, and one left again. She must have been the music box lady. and leaving the sumo back, watching me. And then eventually the music box lady returned and they both sped off down the side of the house. I didn't want them to go. I felt like I knew them, that they were friends of mine. But then I decided to settle back in my body. Well, I guess it wasn't really a decision. I just did. And then I went to get sick again. So during this NDE, I discovered we have contracts with other souls. And because later I find out who she is, and she's a family member. The second NDE, which I was shown, was a severe car accident where I was saved by divine intervention. I had wanted to plant flowers that day because my kids were in Idaho visiting my parents for a month because they didn't get to see them very often. They invited the children there. And so I had a month for myself because they were 800 miles away. I had no family around. So I was the mother of 3 kids and trying to handle work, and everything else too. So this was some time off. So I wanted to decorate the large deck we had so that it would be really pretty for the kids when they got home because we like to barbecue out there. So, but when this car accident happened, I was hit by a not a speeding pickup truck, but I had to stop behind a car that was stopped in the middle of the road for where there wasn't a cross street, or anything. But there was a park on the left side. So I wasn't sure if a child had walked across the street and that's why they had stopped. So I stopped behind him. Then all this traffic came barreling down the hill because it was at the bottom of a hill. And the pickup truck barreled into the back of my car, which pushed my car into the one in front of me. But as he approached, I called out in my mind, "Oh God, he's going to hit me," because I was only a block and a half from the nursery, and I hadn't fastened my seatbelt yet. I was going to fasten it on my way home. And now I knew that I didn't have time. And that's just by that thought, I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Lay down across the seat and cover your face." Well, the strange thing is that I was the only one in the car. So where was the voice coming from? And then the collision happened, and I was, I don't know, basically lifted out of my physical body while this played out, because I saw the windshield, the glass above me shattering in slow motion at one point of this accident. And then that's when it was pushed into the car in front, which would have, made me go forward. And so, but instead of being thrown forward, I felt a big arm slip under my arms and another big arm under my knees. And I was being lifted up by some being I couldn't see. And then I was above the scene, looking down through some clouds and viewing the accident scene from above. And I could see clearly. But my glasses had been tossed from my face in the accident. So out of your body, everything is healed. Because once I was snapped back in my body again, then I couldn't see anything. When the ambulance came to pick us up, to pick me up, I don't know if anybody else was injured in that accident because I was so out of it from that happening. And so in this experience, I was in another dimension looking into this one. And the first one, I was in this dimension looking, into 2 other worlds. So I remember them putting me on a board to put me in the ambulance. And I heard a lady say she's been tossed around the car, but when they asked me if I was, I said no. because I wasn't aware that I was. It was after, because I was up in the back, I was in the front seat where I was initially laid down across the seat. But later, when I took pictures of the car, studied them, I realized it was the rear window that shattered, and it was the front one was still intact. And my glasses were on the floor where I laid down. So the force of the collision, took my body back into the back seat, leaving my glasses to fall to the floor, obviously. And that's when the seats got knocked down because my body had been thrown in the back. And then when the impact pushing me into the other car happened, then that's when my physical body, and I'm sure there was many, many angels there to help me that day, because my body obviously ricocheted off the top of the headliner of the car, and rolled me into the front seat again because my legs were over the steering wheel instead of under the steering wheel. So I that in that experience, it was divine intervention. And I know that our prayers are answered because he did answer my prayers. Maybe it's because sometimes our prayers aren't answered because they, it has to do with the lesson that we've been assigned, or somebody else in that in the group it was a lesson for them as well. So I no longer could discount that there was something going on. The first one I had discounted because I was 15 and I was more interested in dating. But this one, and I couldn't escape it, but I still didn't tell anybody, because who was gonna believe what I said? They would say, "Yeah, sure, you Jen, you'd be you need a little rest." But
Well, you
so,
have some extremely profound experiences, and I know that they've changed your life in a physical way. You're spreading the word, you're writing books, and you're speaking and teaching people. But has it changed you in another way on the inside, the way that you believe, the way that you live your life?
oh yeah, oh yeah. Because the message that I was told to bring back, and because it echoes in me every day, then I know that, and because he lives inside of us. If you think about that, his divine emissary is inside of us. It's our consciousness. So it's my consciousness talking to you, and it's your consciousness talking to me. It's God. So when we act towards somebody not nicely, God is experiencing it from the giver's point of view and from the receiver's point of view. So I evaluate everything that I say, before it comes out of my mouth. So yes, it has affected me drastically. And I also, because of what happened with the panel of spiritual beings, I no longer judge anybody, because nobody knows, what made a person what they are. Um, my family didn't know about my experiences until this book came out, and now a lot of things make sense to them. So, you know, and consciousness is not a stagnant energy. So it's endlessly learning and evolving through us. And it learns by our experiences because it lives life with us. So sees through our eyes. So yeah, it has made a drastic difference. And now, I'm talking, which I wouldn't have done like that, when I was shy. So it has transformed me dramatically. And I went from being called Jan before, and afterwards I had changed so much. I started introducing me to my birth name, Janet. It's a small change, you would think, but it's a drastic one for me because I'm no longer the person that I was before. And that's because he wanted me to write about this so people, know that there's a divine message here for everybody, not just me. So, and that's what it wants us to do. It wants us to start learning to communicate with the divine inside, because after all, this body is the temple, of his spirit. So, yeah.
And on that note, I want to touch on that about learning how to find the divine within us. Obviously, you've had direct experiences, so it may come a little easier for you. But what do you suggest to others? How can they start their path of
Oh,
learning who
yes.
they truly are?
Oh, yes, that's a good one. I love that question because I have, and it's so ridiculously easy. People discount it because if you are, coming down the steps and you had forgotten a paper upstairs, well, you hear this subtle voice, a thought pop in your head, papers, and then it reminds you that okay, so you start out small like that, say, thank you for the help. And then you go up and you can get them. And then you start recognizing that inner voice because you weren't thinking about that. You weren't thinking about the keys that you left behind. You weren't thinking about the mixer that was plugged in and you were putting, the beaters in it, and you hear this voice unplug it. It's just so little things like that. Or I was looking for a letter from my uncle that I had received, and I love his letters, and I had placed it somewhere and I couldn't find it. So I had asked the angels for help. Please help me find this letter. And I had come down the steps to make some popcorn, and my eyes were drawn. It just kind of automatically went to the corner of the table where a stack of papers. Well, I discounted it, and I went and made my popcorn. And then I went to get popcorn and there wasn't any, so I had to go downstairs to my pantry and get some to refresh my supply. When I came up, then my eyes were drawn to the table again, that corner of the table. I thought, aha, there's something there. I get better check it out. So then I went to the corner and I lifted up each paper by itself because I had looked there many times. But when I picked up the last paper, it was stuck to the back of that. So they help you, they help you like that. They direct you by the inner voice that pops into your head. The more you thank them and acknowledge their existence, the more you're going to hear it and understand that that's your divine messenger dispatching messages to guide you along the way. So those are very easy, and that's a good way to start, and then you can develop it from there.
And when you wrote your book, was it something similar? Were you divinely inspired or called to write your book?
Well, since I was directed, I had to. Yeah, but as I was writing, I mean, some nights I would be writing all night long, and it seemed like nothing to me because I was just immersed in it, and it was like I was typing furiously all night long. And then at the time, that's when I was taking care of my parents during their last 5 years of their life. Well, I was writing my manuscript while I was taking care of them. And my mom would say, how can you do that? Staying up all night like that. I said, well, it just flashed by. It just, you connect with it and you go and you don't get tired. And so, yes, I took care of my parents during the last 5 years, which I feel was another contract for me because I felt drawn to do that. And I thought it was an honor for me to do. But the last couple years of their lives, uh, it became harder. My brother and I would cycle in and out of their house for every 3 months. And um, we had to finally put them into a great caregiving facility, which was wonderful. And in this particular time, um, I was not had to, but it was my time for break and they were doing very well. So I went to see my fiance, in another country. I mean, he's my husband now. But then I got the call that my dad's death was imminent, which was totally unexpected. But he had told me this was in September, and in I think it was March, he had an episode, and he said, I heard the doctors talking, two male doctors talking, and he didn't have two male doctors at that time. But he said, they told me I was going to die. They said I was going to die before mother. He called my mom mother. So I kind of noted that because, you know, this does happen. When he had the episode, there was two angelic doctors, I'm sure, overseeing him. This is going to be in my next book that'll be coming out later this year. It's getting toward the end. And I keep saying that, but it really is. I'm taking baby steps to get there. It seems like things get in my way. But while I came home, I was managed to get home in time to spend the last 7 hours. And I happened to catch when I woke up from a nap, I had a feeling I should be taking films. And so I started, because his breathing had changed, and I thought I could take it to the nurse and ask questions. And so I was filming him and when he died, and I caught his spirit leaving his body. And that's when I put it in video. I had permission because they agreed to share with me everything they saw and experienced during the last 5 years, during their time of approaching death. So they did. So I made notations of all that. But there's a video on my YouTube channel called Real Spirit Caught Leaving Body or something like that. And it shows his spirit leaving the body.
And I'll link that YouTube channel down below in the video description for anyone who wants to check that out or check out your other videos as well, because that sounds very fascinating. Did you open like a portal or a channel or an opening somehow?
Yeah. I didn't open a portal, but a known after effect for some near-death experiences, continued communication, and I get that, and that's what the panel of high spiritual beings was about. So these things have happened so far apart. I didn't connect them until they were shown to me, and I understood the meaning of all them. And so this book that I wrote is actually my timeline, my book of life. It's because I went based off all these movies that he showed me, and then what I learned from all of them. So I just get communication when they want me to know something, and that's it. I don't just admit, I am a certified medium, but I don't practice because that's not my comfort level. I would rather share this way with books and videos to help people understand that our consciousness is our spirit, and God and Jesus and the angels are real. I saw them. So the heaven is real.
What happens after we die?
Oh, that video will show you because we leave our body. And there's another one coming out because I dove deeper into that because a couple of viewers told me about trying something, which I did try. And when I go deeper into that video, I can see that there are 6 or more light beings with my dad. And so that'll be a short video. They'll be coming out soon. You'll be able to actually see that we are greeted by spiritual beings when we leave our body, and then they guide us to heaven.
I look forward to that.
Yeah.
And if my viewers wanted to reach out to you or they wanted to order your book, how can they find you?
They can go to my janettarantino.com, my website. And on my website, I have my dad's video, which is linked to my YouTube channel. And I have all my social media links there too. So you click on the link that you want, and it'll take you right to my YouTube channel, my Instagram site, in Facebook, etc. So if you go there, and there's a communication page, contact page. So if you want to send me a message, you can always contact me through there or through my email, which is janettarantinoauthor@gmail.com. So come join me on any of my sites, and always remember, love is the only thing that matters. And that's how we should live our lives.
I was just going to ask if you had any last words of wisdom, and that sounds like very wise words.
Because it is the most mystical adventure we're going to have, and you can make it fun or you can make it difficult. So always have a positive view on life and make it a good one.
Thank you so much, Janet. It has been so much fun to hang out with you for this hour and discuss your experience. Thank
It
you.
was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people. And that's the goal, to get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.